Just check that's all working. Great, the recording has started. Yeah, so we're going to be recording for the purposes of the video. I'm Tess, I'm the business change lead. And then today we're going to be presenting the vision for 2023 to give everyone a big picture of what's happening, as well as information about the first 2 releases in 2023 for BODS, so that you can understand what features have been released and then how you can actually use those features to improve the data you have on BODS. So starting off with the vision, we need to really ask ourselves, what is it that we want to achieve through BODS as an industry? And the real aim is a single source of truth for bus data, enabling anybody who's interested in that data, but primarily journey planning applications, local authorities, urban planners, people like that, to utilize the data in advance and in real time, and including in that other data sources such as disruptions and predictions as well. So that's the real aim, is to become that single source of truth for all bus data. We do have multimodal aspects to BODS. We have some trams data, we're enabling trans data. So there are other aspects, but the primary aspect is to be the single source for bus data. Within that vision, we already have established that we want, timetables, real time and fares. And with timetables, we really want that 42-day look ahead, but we also want those timetables where possible to enable real time information as well. What that really means at a level is that there are some indicators, there are real-time information indicators within the data that enable us to match timetables and AVL together to create things like predictions. And we really need those different identifiers to be correct. Isri's going to go into a lot of detail on them later, so I'm not going to jump to the gun, but there are certain fields that really help for us to make sure are the same information shared in the timetable, say the knock, the line, the journey code is the exact same identifier used in the AVL as well. That's how we're going to get the maximum value out of this data. So we're asking ourselves some questions around how we're going to achieve this single source of truth. A big part of that is the data standards, making sure that we're aligning to them, we're using them correctly, that we're giving you feedback on how you can improve to make sure that you give everyone what they need from your data. We're going to be working with software suppliers because they're huge enablers for this data. It really does matter that we're aligning with them, that we're getting it right with them, and that we're speaking to them because they are employed by operators to help them comply with the legislation. And not just that, it's also about making sure the data is high quality, usable, and does improve the passenger experience, which is ultimately the aim of this whole programme. We want to help publishers. We want to make it easier for operators and agents where they're helping to publish data to BODS, and that to be an efficient process. And we want to make it easier for consumers to utilize the data and extract the value from it as well. Lastly, we need to make sure that we're getting our feedback loops correct. So we're feeding back to operators where they think they should make changes, not just us as a central team, but we actually need everybody in the industry to be doing that. And we have seen people doing that through the feedback mechanisms available on BODS really successfully so far. So firstly, a big thank you to the consumers who have given feedback, and a thank you to the operators who have willingly and quickly responded to those findings and feedback from the consumers. So this is the vision. Any questions about single source of truth before we kind of move on? I can see something in the chat. Question, hi, if those real-time information journey references are important, why are they not mandated in the PTI schema? Or do we take this to mean that there may be one day required in the piece of PTI on BODS? Great, Tony, you've hit the heart of the question. So just so that we're all in alignment, there are lots of different identifiers that can be used to match the timetables in the AVL. We have some which are mandated. So for example, journey code is mandated. We need it. You have to give it to us. We have other things such as block references and tracks, which are massively useful for real-time information, hugely value adding, that are optional currently. The reason that blocks was originally optional is blocks tells you, so blocks is the name in Trans Exchange. It's also known as, so journey code is mandated. It's just whether they're getting it right or not is the big question, and we'll get more into that. Blocks was not mandated, so blocks can also be known as driver duties, bus working numbers, as well. So you can use your bus working number or driver duty to populate the block data element in the trans exchange and the AVL. The reason it wasn't made mandatory to begin with in the timetables is because you don't always know the block 42 days in advance. And so we have this conflict that we want the data in advance, but you might not have that kind of operational data at that time. There will be further questions on whether it should be mandated or not. It's hugely important for cross-journey predictions. So knowing what block that bus is running, that it's going to do the journey, it's going to do line 1 and then line 2 and then go back to line 1. That lets us know that if it's late on its first journey, it's also going to be late probably on its second journey. And that's great for a thing known as cross-journey predictions. Cross-journey predictions affect the first to fifth kind of stop within a bus route. So if we really want to give people good predictions between the first and the fifth stop on any particular route, they're going to be very important. So yes, it's always going to be open to discussion whether what should be mandated. It's going to be a reflection of what's possible within the industry, what solutions are available, and will be part of a consultation, really. What further developments are planned for links within the registration system? So Ian, I don't know of anything else further planned, but it's a good question. We can take it away and get back to you more on that. So great, thanks, Ben. So some information about the timetables profile Ben's shared. What does that mean for BODS? So BODS is a digital product. We do work on it. We release improvements all the time. And what you're seeing here is kind of a list of different improvements that we're planning to release to you to use across a few different products. So we've got our Bus Open Data product, which is the website you log in to publish your data or consume the data. We have a product called Create Fares Data Service, which is a free service open to all operators who want to create their fares data for BODS. It's in a compliant NetX format, ready to go, ready to publish. We have some work on disruptions. So there's going to be a phase 1 disruptions tool being produced. And then we have the Python data extractor, which is the change team's analytical tool that we've shared with everybody because we hoped it would be useful to the consumer community. In terms of the BOD service being the most important thing to kind of go through with this group, we've released our 1.21, which Israel will take us through in a bit, and our 1.22, which again, Israel will take us through in a bit. These were focused on improving both the reference data sets, so the registrations, the bus registrations from the OTC. We were getting it one way. Now we're getting it a much better way on a daily basis. So, you know, those cancellations will be reflected more quickly. It will more honestly reflect the traffic commissioner's information as well. 1.22, the point here is that to really get the true value out of BODS, we've got to be able to match that timetable and AVL data. We've got to have those corresponding objects. We've got to have the same line name in both files, that kind of thing. And so we're giving feedback to operators about to what extent do your timetables and AVL match, and then giving you some information on how that can be improved. And Israel will go through kind of what sort of information to expect. What we're really expecting here is, yes, some of the larger operators will be able to grind through a lot more of this on their own, but we really are expecting operators to have to work with their suppliers to get this right. Some of it may be sort of supplier orientated dev, but a large majority of it will be operators needing to allocate resource to improve their data where the data points aren't correct or they're mispopulated, leading to a much higher quality data on BODS, because the best way to check whether data is good is to check 2 different sources. And that's effectively what we're doing. Then we've got more information coming on compliance and monitoring. This really will help to see where operators are or are not complying with the legislation for BODS, and any operators that aren't complying with the legislation will be referred for further enforcement action. So this is just making sure that we can identify those operators and give a good amount of analytics around that. 1.24, we know very much that our email notifications can be a bit of a nightmare. There's too many of them, they're sporadic. We need to condense that into a more consolidated set of email notifications so that you're actually your attention is drawn to the right thing at the right time. In March, we're also going to be releasing the fares validator. So at the moment, as long as you're providing generic data standard called NetX. It'll be accepted. We need it to be in a bit more of a specific format than that. So we've been working with the suppliers to make sure that we're getting there. And that will be released around March. So what we've seen in the 1.22 is that we're releasing the matching reports to the operators in January. We've already done it. They should be able to see them already. And then we're going to release it to consumers in March. So there's a kind of 2-month grace period for operators to really affect some change here before, you know, the ability to match your data will be kind of shared with everybody. In 1.26, we're going to be looking at flexible services and just making sure they're enabled. And 1.27, we'll have the simple fares validator 2, which will just be a kind of additional part of part 1. And what we're also at this moment in time, people are unable to do a thing called simple fares. So fares data is split into 2. So it's simple and complex. We do expect people to have already published their simple fares. The deadline has already passed over a year ago. If you're having any issues with that, it would be helpful if maybe Isra, you could pop the help desk email in there and you can reach out to the help desk and we can help onboard you to the Create Fares data service to make sure that you are published and are compliant. And then from the BODS data extractor perspective, we're focusing on visualizing the data, understanding it, making sure the data quality is high and providing feedback. So we'll be working to that extent as well. So there is a question from Nick. Is there a reason why the TFL AVL data is more difficult to match to the static schedules in comparison to other operators? Yes, there is a reason, Nick. The reason is that the operators are publishing their data with their own personal NOCs, national operator codes, which tend to be sort of 4-digit operator identifiers. Whereas the AVL for TFL is coming from a central source, and instead of using the same NOC, they're using a centralized TFLO NOC. So if you're trying to match those 2 data sources, that becomes very difficult because you can't use the NOC as an identifier when it should be used as a main identifier. We have raised this with TFL, they are aware of it, and we're waiting kind of a response on what their proposed actions are around that issue. So
if you prefer, Tess, I can keep an eye on the questions in the chat and
reply
to them in the chat.
Cool. Because we're probably running a bit over time. Okay. Yeah, that would be very helpful. Thanks. So what does this mean in terms of a pipeline? If we're going to be the single source of truth on BODS, we want everybody to be coming to BODS for their data, everybody to be looking at the same files so that we can really make those files the highest quality files. So what that means is for operators, at the moment, we've got operators sometimes using a timetable supply, which is 2.1, sometimes, and then upscaling it in 2.4. Sometimes we have an operator just using 2.4. And data from these systems are going out to BODS, but they can be also going out to individual consumer companies. And what that means is that's a lot of duplication of effort sometimes for operators. What we want to aim to do is just have one single source through the green sort of line. So sometimes local authorities help operators supply data as well, so that it all comes through this particular pipeline. We're all looking at the same thing. Great for passengers because when they look at their phone and use Google Maps, it's going to be the same thing that they get when they look at their real-time information display as well. So it's really important that we give that consistency out. And from BODS, what we want to enable, we want to stop these back channels to everybody and make sure everyone is focused on the same set of data. What does that mean? We need to give people an offering. We need to give consumers an offering from BODS that's worth coming to. And that means that we need to be able to provide information for schedule-based journey planning. So in advance, you know, up to 42 days in advance, or a minimum of 42 days in advance. We also want to have the right real-time information within both the timetables and the actual real-time AVL feeds to enable that real-time journey-based planning. And we also want to really, whether it's us providing a central service or any of the consumers providing a prediction service, that we want to be possible from BODS data. We're not necessarily committing to who will be doing that, but that needs to be a possible outcome from BODS data. So that that's the main kind of vision for 2023. That's our aim. Yeah, so Lee, yeah, you're asking why are we trying to stop the back channels? Well, it's not just one back channel. There's often 2 or 3 local authorities, 3 or 4 consumers, then there's BODS. There's a lot for an operator to have to keep up with. And what we're asking is for us to really come together here and try and do everything from BODS where possible. And it will take time for people to transition and trust the data and make sure that it's ready for their production system. But the aim is to take that, up to 9 different interested parties and start pushing that through a single pipeline. That means that each of these parties get the same information firstly, but also that they're not getting different qualities of information from different sources. Everybody should be getting the same information, even if it is sent separately. Can't stop that, but we do want the data sent to everybody to be the same. So before we move on to the demo, we have a hand from Lee. Lee, I'm sure you're going to bring me to reality, so definitely would love to hear from you.
I was just going to say that if you're going to make sure there's only one way of people getting this information, if you're going to stop the back channels and only have the BODS channel, then BODS needs to be as good as or better than the back channels. You can't turn the other data supplies off and replace them with an inferior data supply. That's not the right way of doing it. You have to make sure BODS is of the requisite quality before you do that.
Completely agree. Lee, it's a great point. We need to make BODS competitive to draw people into that. And one of the ways is to make sure that all these 3 use cases are enabled through the BODS data. It's going to be a journey this year to get the data there. But I think what we'll see is through the 2 releases that Israel will go through, there are some really useful bits of information there to get the data to where we really need it to be. And we'll be working all year to try and get there. Callum, I can see you've got your hand up.
Hi, Tess. Yeah, just coming off the back of what Lee was saying there. So, obviously, in a minute we're going to be talking about sort of matching of the data sets, and we've talked about compliance and like the quality of the data sets that comes through. But one of the things that I find in our area is that operators might only provide part data sets. So even if they're scoring 100% on those data sets, there's a lot missing from BODS. And so I guess ultimately, in terms of as we discussed, turning off these other back channels and pulling things through BODS, what things are in place, or who is responsible for ensuring that operators, because obviously these legal deadlines have passed, but what's going to be done about ensuring that, or basically making the operators put it into BODS?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we're talking here about not just getting operators onto BODS, but once we've got an operator on BODS, we need to get all of their data onto BODS, not just a single line, for example. So there are kind of a few bits to it. We need to be honest about the blockers to people. So there are some particular examples where the data might not be shown, things like where the registration is seasonal. So it's the other side of the year. There is no service right now and there isn't really any data. That's a kind of example. There are other examples where there might be a registration for a service, but it hasn't run for many years, or it isn't running now and really it needs to be cancelled. And actually there is no data expected. So there are some examples where it's a bit null like that. We need to handle them and remove them so that people aren't focused on the wrong thing. From what do we do about what's missing? Well, we're firstly informing people. So Israel will go through the data requiring attention, and we're trying to increase trust around this feature, because it really just tells you what services we expect on BODS that we don't have. Now, that may be because they're seasonal and we're working on providing an ability to tell us that. It may be because it was cancelled and the traffic commissioner hasn't reflected that in their database for some reason. Either the cancellation was never made, it hasn't gone through, lost in translation. Then we get to kind of the real problems, which are where an operator has never done anything with BODS, no data from them, has kind of been unwilling to comply with the legislation. In those cases, they have already been referred to the DVSA for further enforcement action. And what will happen in that case is that they'll likely go on to what's known as a 3-month improvement plan. And I think that's kind of a fairly established thing within the enforcement of legislation around BODS, this kind of 3-month improvement plan thing. So that will be kind of the next step for those. After the 3 months, if there is no improvement, that case will then be referred to the traffic commissioner for the traffic commissioner to take action, which could include a variety of things, including kind of a £550 fine per service. So it depends. That's the most extreme example. What most likely is going to happen is that you'll end up spending a lot of time with me and people like me on my team, where we will be walking you through step by step, you know, what's missing, why is it missing, what can we do to get it onto the service, how can we maintain it better. So that's the main kind of stuff. Does that start to answer your question? Is there any?
Yeah, I suppose so. Time ultimately, if there's 3 months, and yeah. I was just trying to understand that relationship between, you know, BODS, local authorities, you know, who's supposed to be saying, look, you need to put this on, and how long is it until we expect it to be there?
Yeah, it will be coming from the traffic commissioner, DFT, our change team. What we really need is it to come from everybody, it to be a very consistent message that if you have a registered service, part of that obligation is to publish data to the Bus Open Data Service, and that data needs to be high enough quality for a passenger to utilise it to get your bus. That is really the expectation, but we do have to be sympathetic to the industry post-COVID. You know, we are getting there. There has been huge, you know, I do remember when we had 20 operators and as many services, and we're now at, I think, 470 operators with, I don't know exactly how many services today, but many thousands of services. So the direction of travel is right. Now we just need to get that quality aspect down.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. So without further ado, poor Rosary's been waiting patiently for me to hand over to her to walk us through what are the features coming out right now that are available to the users to improve their data quality.
Thank you, Tess. Hi, everyone. I'm Yusri. I'm also on the BCM team for the BODS project. So before we begin, I thought it would be good to bring your attention to the changelog. So if you go onto Bus Open Data Service, if you select on Service Changelog under the public information, this is where you should go to if you're interested in what's going on in BODS. So if we scroll down, it takes us through some of the known issues for publishers and consumers, a high-level roadmap, and a brief summary of each release. So today we'll be going through these two, 1.21 and 1.22, but you can also take a look at past releases here as well. So getting straight into it. So the key milestone for release 1.21 is the integration of the Traffic Commissioner's O2C API into the BODS database. So previously we received O2C data through the Traffic Commissioner's CSV exports, which were updated periodically with a minimum of every around 3 months. However, by integrating with the API, we can now have a much more accurate view of registration data, enabling a better user experience for consumers of BODS. The API is refreshed daily, and the key features I'll be presenting in the demo are the more accurate data insights on the service code requiring attention page, which Tess mentioned, and also the updates to the data catalogue. So I'm going to begin by logging into BODS production as an agent for Go Ahead. So if I come out of this. So here I've logged in and I've gone into Bus Open Data Service and Publish Bus Data. So here, so let's say as an operator, I want to review my timetable data to check if I have published all of my services. So to do that, I would click on Review My Published Data. So given I'm an agent for Go Ahead, I would select Go Ahead. And here I can see a number here of 180 services that require my attention. So 180 services are missing in BODS. we can click on more details to see which services these are, and we can filter by the license number, service code, and line name. So the source of this data, as I said, is now coming from the O2C API rather than those CSV files, so it will give me a much more accurate view of which services are missing. Cancel services should no longer be in this value, given that integration. But if you do come across a service which is cancelled, that will need to be updated in O2C. I think we have a question that's popped up. I just can't see it. Tess, would you mind checking?
I'll keep an eye on the questions for you. Is
that right? Yeah. Okay, sorry, I thought I saw a hands up. Okay, cool.
Oh, there is a hand up.
Oh, there might be the hands up. I'll keep an eye on the questions, but the hands up. Yeah.
Vanakararis? I'm a bit dyslexic, sorry. I can't pronounce that quite well enough. What was your question with the hand up? Varan Askas? Is that how you pronounce it? Oh, accidental hand. No worries.
Okay, cool. So I'll continue. So some of the main issues we came across is that cancellations are not being properly cancelled within the Traffic Commissioner. So again, you'll need to go to the Traffic Commissioner to get those cancelled, and then that will come through to BODS. Another one was seasonal services, which we'll take a look at in a second, and then making a mistake. Operators just simply making a mistake in their list of missing services. So in a future release, we will be factoring in service staleness and seasonal services. So what do I mean by a stale service? So a service will be marked as stale if either the end date has passed for that service, if it's 12 months old, or if it's an O2C variation. In terms of seasonal services, we'll also be factoring that into this value here, so that the figure doesn't include services that are out of season unless it's 42 days before the service starts, as they're expected to have published by then. If we go back, at the moment we've got the total consumer interactions with your data next to it. That will actually be replaced by the number of feedback responses received by customers. So that's one key area where the source of data has changed. Another key area is in the data catalogs. So how do I get to the data catalogs? I navigate back to Bus Open Data Service. So this is open for everyone to see the data catalogs. If I click on Find Bus Open Data, Guide Me, we'll see an option for download the data catalog. So I've already downloaded it in the interest of time. So we'll begin by taking a look at the times table data catalog. So here you can see a list of all the services. We're interested in the missing services, so I'm going to put a filter on service status for missing data. And let's take a look. So this should now reflect the service code requiring attention page. So I'm going to navigate back to the service code requiring attention page. Publish bus data. Excellent. So as an example, let's take a look at a go-ahead example. So in here, it says this service code is missing. So I'm going to come into here. I'm going to put a filter on it. But here we'll actually want to replace the / with a semicolon. And you'll see that all of those, that's here. The missing data is here. So all of this will be reflected in this timetable data catalog. The other area where the data that I want to draw your attention to is the organisations data catalogue. So again, really useful page to be. It shows you all your organisations and some high-level information. But the key column that I just want to draw your attention to is the O2C registered services. So again, it's more accurate as it's reflective of the O2C API. If you want to get some more information on what some of these column names mean, the best place to go to is the data catalog guidance page, which breaks each of the files down into their fields with the corresponding definition. So that's everything for release 1.21. Any questions on that so far?
Just on that the number of registered services that we have in the organization's data catalog.
Yeah.
If you have more than one license assigned to your BODS portal, we'll just sum across all the registered services. So we kind of do that for you. So if you want to know how many services we think you should have, then you can go and have a look there as well. Yeah.
Wicked. Thank you, Tess. So I'll now move on to release 1.22. So the key milestone for this release is a data quality matching report to enhance the integration of location and timetable data. So the key features I will be demoing are a weekly overall AVL to timetable matching score for operators, and that gives operators a high-level overview of how they're currently performing in terms of their data quality. We'll also then take a look at a report for each AVL data feed published to BODS, describing the quality of an individual feed. We'll take a look at an archive of the past reports for the last month, which will allow an operator to look back, review their performance, and then potentially make corrections. We'll take a look at the updated guidance page that will reflect all of these new changes. And then finally, on the admin side, we'll take a look at the updated data publishing CSV export to reflect those metrics. So I'm going to go back into BODS production, and we're going to go back. So this time we're in the review go ahead timetable data, but we're going to actually change the data type now to location. So if I select here, I can click plus location data. So let's say as an operator, I want to see at a high level how I'm performing in terms of my data quality for AVL to timetable matching. So to do that, I've come into here, I can see a clear metric here, 60% is my weekly overall AVL to timetable matching score. So again, quick overview of how they're performing, and that value will be updated, it will be updated every Sunday night. And beneath that, you can see a list of your active data feeds. So it's an average of all of these AVL to timetable matching scores. So I may want to also...
Quick question, Isri. What's the aim here? We want that to be 100%, right?
Yes. Yeah, we want that to be 100%. So you'll need to work with your AVL supplier or potentially your timetable supplier to make those corrections. I will be taking you through some of the useful detailed files that will explain where the problems are, but you'll need to speak to them to correct that. And in a couple of weeks, the BODS team will be reaching out if it hasn't reached 100%.
And I guess the suppliers, there are supplier sessions happening, so the suppliers are aware of this. So if you take this information to your supplier, it won't be a shock. If there are any suppliers on the line who feel like they haven't had enough support on this, we should have reached out to you already. But if we haven't, my email is going in the chat. Please just reach out. We will make sure you're fully facilitated.
Perfect, thank you, Tess. So let's say I want to see the quality of data for an individual feed. I can do that by selecting on a data feed. So here we can clearly see the AVL to timetable matching score, but if I click into it, we get some high-level information, and I can select download matching report. Again, I've already downloaded it. So, so this is for this week. We get a series of files. So the first file that I will draw your attention to is the README file, which is really useful. It begins with a bit of a summary as to what the AVL to timetable data matching is all about. But the key piece of information here is that the AVL to timetable matching is based on a daily random sample of data packets for each feed. Underneath that, we've got a bit of a brief definition of what each of these files mean. And again, beneath that, within each file, it breaks it down into the separate fields, giving a definition next to it. And further down, again, this is also interesting. It shows you the process step by step of how the serial VM and TXT files are matched and where it could fail. So if we take a look at some of those files, we'll begin by looking at the AVL to timetable match summary. So this gives a high-level overview result of how well those sampled vehicle activity data from those feeds matched to the timetable data. So it tells us the number of vehicle activities that were analysed. it tells us of those vehicle activities that were analysed, were the Siri fields populated. So in this case, they were all populated, which is really great. Next to that, it's just a percentage of this. On the right of that, we've got the successful match with TXC. So this is the total number of Siri VM fields that successfully matched with the equivalent TXC field on this side. And then again, a percentage of that. So here we can see that 879 of the ticket machine journey code matched to the dated vehicle journey ref in the Siri field. Another important thing here is they completely matched all elements with timetable data, excluding block ref. So this is cases where the AVL feed has matched to the timetable except for block reference. So we can see 77% matches have happened, and that will correspond to your value here. So that's one key file. But if we go back, a few others that I want to show you are the uncounted vehicle activities. So this takes a look at all the vehicle activities that were collected but couldn't be analysed because they couldn't be matched with the corresponding TXC file, and we couldn't find the journey code for them. So obviously you want to know, well, why is the trip not in my transit exchange? And the best place to go to is this column H. It gives a brief definition, a brief reason, sorry, of why they aren't matching. So in this case, the Siri VM couldn't be matched to the TXC file because there was no matching knock and line name. So this is really useful when trying to debug and see why it's not matching. So this is cases where we couldn't find the vehicle journey ref, but in cases where we could find the vehicle journey ref, these other files, block ref, destination ref, direction ref, and origin ref, look at where the fields didn't match. So as a quick example, if we open up the destination ref, we can see the destination ref in Siri is in this column and the stop point ref in TXC, and we can see that they're not matching. Again, this will help when you're talking to your AVL supplier to figure out, well, is it the Siri VM feed that's correct, or is it the TXC? Cool. And it's important to note that without that vehicle journey ref, we would not be able to populate the other fields. Why is that the case? We begin by matching on knock and line, and then we look at the service, but we need to find the right journey within that service to be able to select the right vehicle journey within the times table file. And then the final one is the all Siri VM analysed, and this just looks at all of the AVL messages collected and analysed. Cool. So we've looked at this week's report, but what about if we wanted to have a look at an archive of the past reports? So I've come back into here. So to do that, to look at an archive of all my past reports, I would come to download all archived matching reports, and you'll get something like this. So if I open that up, you'll see this week's reports, but then you'll also see the previous weeks. And when you open that, you'll then see these feeds and then the corresponding files that I just went through. Wicked, cool. What else? So we also want to take a look at the guidance page. So we can find information relating to the data quality matching reports in the updated guidance page. So to find that, the best way of getting there is if you scroll down and click on bus operator requirements. From here, if you select on data quality and scroll down, there should be a section on, here we go, AVL to timetable matching. So again, brief description as to what it's all about, but it explains the importance of matching in enabling predictions and accurate real-time information for passengers. Below it is a list of all the fields and which ones correspond to which and which ones need to be matched. And further down, we again can see the step-by-step process, the logic around matching the AVL to the timetable feed. So that's everything on the operator side. We'll now take a quick look at the admin side. So I'm going to sign out of this.
Should we just, before we move on, should we just see if there are any questions from the operators just while we're still logged in?
Yeah, good point.
I know there's a lot of operators on the line. It's a lot to digest, and I know you'll need to work with your suppliers in many cases, but any questions? Any noddy questions? Yes, Amanda.
Very silly question from a small rural community bus operator. What's the time window for matching? What's considered a successful match? If we're comparing the time on the timetable versus the AVL time, or am I misunderstanding?
No, you're not misunderstanding at all. So obviously the bus might not actually go to the stop at exactly the right time. And that's fine. You know, well, it's not fine. Obviously your schedule adherence needs to be good, but it doesn't matter if the bus doesn't turn up exactly at the right time, because the matching, enabling these different corresponding items, lets us know that we're trying to match this vehicle in the real time to this timetable, even if the timings don't even align that well.
But is there a sort of time limit beyond which you decide, okay, this service isn't running, the bus is obviously not being able to continue on the service?
I think I can probably clarify this a little bit. So the matching report that we're doing here is not measuring schedule adherence or punctuality.
Right.
It's measuring the quality of the data that is supplied in your vehicle location message data that's supplied by maybe your ticket machine operator. The report here will tell you if any of the data in your vehicle location messaging is not correct. So we're looking at things like, is the origin of correct, or the destination correct, or the direction, like inbound, outbound. These are the things that are supplied in a vehicle location message, and these need to be correct. And the way that we're checking whether these are correct is by looking at the transit change file. So this report will show whether we can find the transit change file for that journey, and once we've found that journey, is the destination right, is the origin right, is the direction right.
So it's more important that the driver logs the right journey than whether the bus is on time or not.
For this report, absolutely right. Yeah, it's really important for the operator to, yeah, exactly, for the driver to select the right journey, so that when it's sending data, anyone reading that data can see what journey that bus is on. Yeah, okay, that's what this report is all about.
Thank you very much.
And with actioning this report, you know, if this is 100%, then what you're going to see is in things like BODS or anything that's looking at your schedule adherence, they're actually able to generate schedule adherence information. So to generate schedule adherence, you have to match the data. So even to generate that insight on the performance, you do need to be able to match it first. So yeah, great. So over to admin.
Great. So this is the last part. So finally, I want to sign into the admin portal to show how DFT admins can monitor the high-level PPC metrics for operators, and to provide basically a greater insight into the quality of data for a given operator. So to do that, I've logged into the admin portal. You'll select data monitoring, followed by select monitoring metrics to download, and download all publisher monitoring metrics. So I've already downloaded that here. So yeah, actually, let me show you what it looks like in the file. So it will come up as operational exports, and we're going to look at the dataset publishing file.
So the user of the admin portal is people like us. So me, Ben, Isri, the DVSA use the admin portal, the DFT use the admin portal. So they're the kinds of users who will be able to access this information to do things with.
Yeah. So the key new columns that have been added are these four, which corresponds to that operator view which we looked at. So as an example, so we can see the AVL to timetable feed matching score for all these different operators. We can go straight into the matching report for that week. We've got that overall score that we saw on the operator screen. And then we can also go straight into the archive matching reports through this link. And as we said before, you know, we want all of these to be 100%. That's the aim here. And we'll be reaching out if it's not in the next couple of weeks to see if we can support you. Any questions? I think we have a question.
Michael McGlynn, hello. Michael, have you got a question you'd like to share?
Yes, hello.
Hiya.
Sorry about that. How many suppliers? You mentioned a scary number of suppliers at the beginning that you were talking about. How are you going to assist all of these suppliers? I mean, there's quite a number of them. Are we talking thousands here? I think.
No, I think I haven't got an exact count, but I think there's about 15 suppliers of timetables and AVL that we know are being used on BODS. So some of them are timetables, some of them are AVL, ticket machine suppliers, those kinds of people. Ultimately, the operators pay the suppliers to support them. So we're here to support the suppliers in fulfilling their obligations for their operators. So we're not going to necessarily do things for the suppliers, but we are going to absolutely provide them with useful information, training, so that they know. And the whole way through the process, right? The suppliers are involved when we design things, they're involved when we test things, they're involved the whole way through, because we need them to be working with us, and often we can make a lot more progress working with the suppliers, if that makes sense.
Okay, yep, thank you.
Yeah, so about 15.
I'll just add on to that a little bit that the data quality matching report that we're seeing is really detailed, and it's detailed so that if there is an issue, the suppliers can help the operator to solve that problem. So my guidance is absolutely for operators to have a look at the score, and if it's not 100%, send that on to your suppliers, and they should be able to help you solve that problem. Sometimes the data will be needing to be fixed in the vehicle location data that's being sent. Sometimes the data is wrong in the transit exchange. So, and as Amanda was saying, I think that it will highlight where cases where the operator, the drivers need to make sure they're selecting the right journey. But yeah, the first port of call would be your AVL supplier, your ticket machine supplier, to see how they can solve the problem for you, and they will say, yeah, we can see why that wrong data is being sent through, or they might say, actually, this is a problem in your transit exchange file, you need to talk to your transit exchange supplier, and maybe that might be a different supplier. So yeah, have a look at the score, send it on to your AVL supplier, and take it from there.
Edmund Tresham, what's your question?
Yeah, just thinking about, I mean, obviously, in real world things will happen, and from time to time, a journey won't run for, we'll see every reason, sort of RTA, sort of road issues, whatever. Would that then mean that you won't get 100% because the journey hasn't run?
So this is only run on AVL data that we receive. So what this is not doing is checking whether your AVL data for all of your journeys is supplied. That is something I'd like to introduce, but right now this validation report will look at if you do send us some vehicle location data. So if you switch on your ticket machine and your vehicle location app, if you switch it on and you start sending data to BODS, then we're going to analyze that data and see how well that data matches with the timetable data that you published as well. So if your journey is not running, you won't be sending any location data, it won't be analyzed.
Thank you.
Hi Ben, TMB. What's your question?
Few services in between school contracts. I've got to admit, about 90% of this is going straight over my head. So as an operator, how much of this do we need to understand, or is it really just going to our supplier and just trying to make sure we've got as accurate information as possible?
Yeah, absolutely. If it doesn't say 100%, then there needs to be an action and there needs to be effort put in. You will probably get the gist over time to be able to maybe open up a report and see that it's to do with the line number 2, for example, and then that will maybe help the scheduler involved or whoever manages the timetable data to improve it. The best thing to do is just to see that it's not 100%, get that AVL report and share it with both your timetable supplier and your AVL supplier, asking them for guidance. It will be down to them to train and help the operators utilize their systems to provide compliant data. And they will be able to absolutely help you. It will just be a case of identifying why the mismatch has occurred. It is worth knowing that if you're an operator, sometimes I think in your, say, ticket machine, you can log into a journey and then you realize it's the wrong one, log out. You can't always necessarily then log back into that journey. In that case, they won't align because they won't have the same journey code information. So, you know, you might notice something like that happening, and then you can just, you know, put that down to driver error, and just, if it happens all the time, let drivers know not to log into other people's journeys or to try a little harder not to. But yeah, the main action for operators is it 100%? Yes, move on. Is it not? Send it to your supplier and go from there.
Okay, thank you. Yeah,
it's a really detailed report, and I do think that it's technical enough for the suppliers to know how to help you. So it should be that you share this report with your supplier and they'll give you like a plain English like solution that might be, yeah, your driver didn't use the right journey when they're operating the ticket machine, something like that. Or they might say that your ticket machine, your timetable data is out of date, that kind of thing. So your AVL supplier should be able to help you understand how to solve the problems. As Tess says, it might be after a while you keep on getting the same response from your supplier, but yeah, I would strongly suggest that the report can just be forwarded on and they'll tell you what to do about it. We're looking to make this report publicly accessible. It's not yet. In the first few weeks that we've deployed this to production, it's only available to the operators and their agents. In a month or so, we're going to make this so it's publicly accessible. That'll make it a bit easier for your suppliers to access these reports, and also it should give us some time to iron out any bugs that might have crept through to production. We've tested it carefully. We don't think there are any, but we want to make sure that the user experience is right before we get this out so that it's visible by users of the data, transport authorities and DVSA. So there's an opportunity for operators to work with their suppliers to make sure that they can work with these reports and improve the scores. So in that period, you'll just need to download the report and forward it by email to your supplier, and contact me or the team or the help desk if you need any help with that process. For some it's easy, for some it's a bit of a pain, you know, to download and then attach that as an email. So let us know if you need any help with that. We'll talk you through how to do it.
Great. Well, that brings us to time on the hour. We will be running further workshops if that's helpful to people, to help maybe understand some of this stuff and maybe work with you more. Is there anybody who wants something like that, wants drop-ins, wants more support? Just want to do a quick check while we've got such a good attendance on the line. If you're free to drop it in the chat or just come on mute if there's anything you'd like to see help-wise from us that we can help with. Maybe it's too soon. Great. Well, any ideas, send it through to the help desk, send it through to me, and we will see how we can help further. I know it's new to everybody and everyone's probably just thinking, God, let's get a look at it first. But yeah, we are here to help, and it will be a progress over the year to get there. But by the end of the year, we really are aiming for that single source of truth. So thank you, everybody, for turning up. and more next time. Next week's session will be the exact same as this week's session, so don't feel like you have to come again. If anyone noticed that as well. So there's a question. So feel free to drop off if you want, but will there workshops for software engineering? There will be more workshops with consumers. We do need, yeah, more in the consumer community to come together and work together. So definitely yes, and reach out to us. Right, thanks everyone for your time. I will be stopping the recording about now.